Welcome back. This is part two of our review retrospective of The Exorcist. Yesterday's video, I was talking to my co-reviewer John because he's seen the film many times, loves the film. I hadn't really seen it properly. So in this video, I've now watched the film and we're going to share thoughts in that new context. So I hope you're enjoying this 11th annual Brand X Reviews Halloween special. We're going to have plenty more to talk about, but like I say, as of last night and tonight, we're talking about The Exorcist, so enjoy.
So in the last video we were talking about The Exorcist. I haven't seen it really. I think I might have done it at some point, but I've no memory of it really. You're a big fan of it, you've seen it many times, you were telling me about it. So this video is for just have a catch up about it, me having now watched the film. Yeah, really enjoyed it. I like films like that, sort of 70s films. My girlfriend wanted to watch it just because I said I'm watching a horror film. She didn't know what it was. She didn't really know films that well, but she was like, "Oh, well, maybe we should watch it together." And I'm like, "You won't like it. She likes new films. She doesn't like anything that's like from the 80s or before that. She wouldn't like that kind of thing."
Yeah,
To me, I think it's a really good era for horror films. The kind of pace that it's got, and the kind of acting that it's got, and the kind of directing that goes into it. So yeah, really
yeah,
enjoyed it.
as well. That's the thing. I think it's coming up to the 50th anniversary, either this year or next. I just can't remember when it was released.
I think it's this year. Yeah.
But yeah, it was. It's been a sort of. It's been massive in my life as a film. I think it came from the video nasty era where you couldn't get hold of certain films, so there were certain ones that you would try and track down. You would go to uh, car boot sales because there'd be
Yeah.
sort of like people, once you figured out who it was, people would start to trust you and you would be able to go and ask for films. So you would get like loads, and they were always on Betamax as a rule as well. So I used to have rooms full of 70s and 80s Betamax movies, and Exorcist was one of them. And then I finally got a copy on VHS, which was incredible. I remember, yeah, it was really good times. But yeah, it's been very impactful, and I think it's from a perspective of it being for me being a practicing Catholic at the time, up until my early teens, I would say it was quite a thing to have a horror film which encapsulated the Catholic faith. So it was quite a powerful thing for me to see that film, and I still watch it. I don't link it to faith now as such. I link it for what it is, but I think it is I think it stands the test of time.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with you on that. And like I say, in that older style of movie isn't everybody's cup of tea, but I think especially by today's standards, I mean, you only really have to look at there's a new Exorcist film out in that there's supposed to be a sequel. I think it's even got the mother from the
Yeah.
original film in it. From what I understand, it's absolute dog shit. Um, did you see the clip where they threw in the thing about the patriarchy into this new film as well?
No, but I'll be watching it and I'll make my own judgment on that because I know the patriarchy. We know that could be taken one of two ways, but it depends. I think for me, I'm going to use that term will definitely be under normal circumstances. It would be an absolute no-no, as we've had these conversations. However, if it's in the context of the priesthood, it might just have a different resonance to me.
Yeah, no, it was done in the sort of third wave feminism. She's that damn patriarchy. It was basically because she was a woman and she wasn't allowed into the inner circle kind of thing. It's like, well, the two priests that were in that died in the process. You know what I mean? It's one of those things. Um, but it's that one of those things, isn't it, with like current movies, they have to put in the message, don't they? So, but going back to the film, we'd have to focus on that really. Um,
Did you catch the subliminal bit moments?
the bit where you see like the demon face thing, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. They weren't too well disguised. They appear for more than just like a tenth of a second or whatever it is. They were enough for you to really see them.
At the time when that came out, it was fascinating me. How did she sort of do that? And she was meant to eat raw eggs. That's how they got the effect of her looking like that. You know, like
Right.
if you go back and sort of watch, slow it right down, look at the throat. That's how they that's sort of did that, which was kind of true. Where there's a scene where Reagan pukes on Karis for the first time, and if you look at Jason Miller's face, it's one
Yeah.
absolute horror. He didn't know that was going to happen, and that was brilliant. Now, can I ask you a question without sort of ruining it for people? Did you in any way get confused by the timeline involving Karis's mother at all?
Not so much. What in terms of timeline? What do you mean?
Well, for me, it was kind of, I've always been this is the bit that just sort of throws me out. One minute he's at his mother's, and then the next day, oh, he got a phone call last night and his mother had died. And I'm like, hang on a minute, it was at his mother's last night. So that part there has always thrown me out.
Yeah, I didn't really consciously pick up on that. Actually, but it's a good point. Yeah, is there a reason for that?
I don't know. I've never really gone into it because I try not to. It's one of those films I just think is outstanding as it is, and I don't want to start picking faults. But that one jars me every time I watch it. It's like, but he was there. I don't understand it at all. And then
Yeah.
let's not forget she was in the hospital, and he went to see her in the hospital as well. And then
Yeah.
apparently she's died the same night. And I'm like, I'm lost at the timing here. Would somebody please make time a bit more? Uh, if you're going to fast forward time or travel on, can we at least see Dark and Night and Dark and Night or something? Just so Dark and Light and Dark. Sorry, it puzzled me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good point. One thing I was going to ask, just to make sure I'm understanding it right, the whole thing at the beginning where it's in Iraq, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is the point of it that they've dug up some demon out there, and that's why the events of the film happen? That he digs up some artifacts and then he sees the statue, and is that where this kind of unearths it, or what?
No, now if you go back, if you remember back to early 2000s, there was two films made, Exorcist the Beginning and Exorcist Dominion. They were actually the same film, but they drafted in Rennie Harlin and I can't remember who the other director was. But that at the beginning signifies that Father Merrin is going to be facing Pizazu again. So in the time frame of Merrin's life, Pizazu is the one constant. Along with God, you've got this demon Pizazu, and when he sees the statue of Pizazu, he knows he's going to be facing Pizazu again at some point in the future, and that's why he goes home from Iraq.
Right.
Quite how Pizazu finds the way to Georgetown. That's another bit. I'm not really following, because if you see films, for example, like Patricia Arquette, Stigmata, she has this artifact sent to her and it's possessed by a mother, so that's how she becomes possessed. With Reagan, I was always a little confused as to, well, how did Reagan get possessed?
Yeah.
It was never sort of made clear. Like you look, there's usually a trope at the beginning, isn't there? You look at Sinister and it's there's the projector left in a box in the center of the attic. There's usually something to indicate that is how that is what causes it. But of course, the cast wouldn't know that, would they? So, but we're letting to the secret that that's where it comes from, and there's whatever it is based around that box. But in terms of Exorcist, it just wasn't there for me. And I've looked, and believe you me, I have watched that film countless times. So unless I am naively watching and accepting something, I just don't understand. I just don't understand how, because the mother, she's not a believer.
Yeah.
She's only rented that film out because they're doing a. They've only rented the house out because they're making a film. That's the only reason that she's in that house. So there's there's nothing logical about it.
Mm. Yeah. And what was the whole thing about the characters that were like big into movies and stuff? What was the point of that from like storytelling point of view? Was that just like some kind of self-insert on the part of the director who obviously loves movies himself, or what was that?
I'm not really sure. I think it was a way of for
Him?
Kinman, the detective, to try and become Fred, to try and build some sort of rapport up with Karis. So
Mm.
So they use films as a way of doing that. And of course, that relationship is then further. Well, Karras is dead, but that relationship with movies is further advanced in Exorcist 3. So it's
Yeah,
sort of like it's come from nowhere, but watching Exorcist 3, which I see as an actual sequel to Exorcist 1, because I just don't acknowledge Exorcist 2. I just think it's awful. I think it is quite possibly the worst horror sequel I could ever imagine. And that
yeah,
includes Season of the Witch.
yeah, I've heard that. That's the case. The third one, in terms of getting hold of a copy of that, I don't think there's one available in the UK, but you can get imports and so on.
There is. It's become available again. I managed to get it on. I know we will have our arguments about streaming, all that sort of thing, but it's become widely available again as Exorcist 3. So whilst it keeps getting, it's one of those films that gets in and out of circulation every periodic. So it's about 30 odd years. So I think there's going to be a 50th box set release coming up. I think that's why it's going. But you can actually get Exorcist 3 in 4K as well.
Oh, okay. What, like from another country, or there's not a? So I mean, I've seen it, but not like one that you'd buy in the shops, is what I mean.
I haven't seen it anywhere in 4K, but I've not been to Leeds for a while either, so I've not seen if it's there, but I know it is available about 20, 30 quid mark. For me, it is very much a film that it's a difficult one to sort of. It's a brilliant film that didn't need the exorcism, and you can sort of see once you look into the sort of film as a whole, you realise that there was never meant to be an exorcism at the end, and it was the bigwigs who insisted on having an exorcism scene inserted into the movie because it just doesn't. It comes out of the. It's very jarring. It's out of the actual. It's literally out of the blue. It's like, why is this priest suddenly getting involved? What's going on here? But it's still, to me, it doesn't ruin the film. It sort of just adds to the quality. It adds to the fact that it was a good film in spite of the exorcism being added to it, and that's my view on that one.
Yeah, well, maybe next year we can talk about sequels and so on, because I quite like the first one enough to watch any valid sequel. I realise number 2 is Dogger, and that new one that came out as well isn't all that good. Bit of trivia for you as well, sort of relevant. I said I was going to mention it in this video, but Max von Sydow, obviously he's done a lot of other films. I didn't know this until fairly recently. I don't know if you know a guy called Adam Earnshaw. Bit of a shout out to him. He was telling me that Max von Sydow did the voice for Vigo the Carpathian in Ghostbusters 2. And I was like, oh yeah, shit, that's his voice, isn't it?
Really, I didn't know that.
Yeah, think about it. The sorrow of Moldavia and all that stuff. That's Max von Sydow.
That's crazy. I mean, Max von Sydow, he's passed away now, but he was acting very recently. He was doing He was in Game of Thrones. And he always added, did Max von Sydow, he always added something to whatever he was in. And what's crazy about him is they didn't have to do much, they didn't have to age him much in that film because he's just always looked older than what he is.
He was like around about my age. I think he was younger than you are, because I mean you're a few years older than me. He's like age sort of between me and you basically. But
I don't know what you mean, I'm 24.
well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, reverse the 2 and the 4 in my case.
It was about 42, 43 was von Sydow when he was in The Exorcism, and he was chosen because he had that. I think he was chosen because he had that presence about him, and they didn't need to age him because the interesting thing about Exorcist 1 is they chose a lot of the priests were actual priests,
Mm,
except for Karras because that was Jason Miller. He was there,
yeah.
and it's a very strange decision. Just to jump to Exorcist 3, it's a very strange decision to bring him into Exorcist 3 as well.
Mm. Yeah, well,
The film you can't deny. You've effectively got in Exorcist 3, you've got Miller, and I forget the other guy's name, and I always forget him, but he's an absolute brilliant character actor. You've effectively got two people playing the same part, and it's so intense, and you just sort of wonder, like, why would they bring Jason Miller back for that when he's doing such a brilliant job? And when you get round to seeing it, you'll understand where I'm coming from there, because it kind of when the exorcism comes into play, it makes sense. But if you take the exorcism out, it'd be like, well, why on earth have they got two characters there?
Yeah. Yeah, well, like I say, I really enjoyed it. I've no memory of seeing it before, so I think when I did watch it, I think I must have like had it on in the background or something. It was the director's cut that I watched as well.
Brilliant. Did you watch it with the car?
No,
No, I just wondered if he'd like it. I wondered what he'd actually think of it, with it being it's a more sedate horror film than it has its moments, but it isn't a. It's not an action-orientated horror film, is it? It isn't. It's one that you can sit and watch, and it sinks into your head. And I love that film because it's almost you're almost thinking about it by the time you come out of the cinema. And you know, I just wondered what he would make of that as a much slower horror film than what
yeah.
we might normally discuss. And I'd genuinely be interested to know what he would think of The Exorcist.
Well, the White House doesn't blow up, and there's no dog leaping through the flames, so he wouldn't like it. But we've got the
I used
core. We've got the core for a couple of videos anyway, for this year at least. So we're going to be unleashing them over the next few nights as well.
It's brilliant to be a part of something like this, though, just to talk, and especially when the film is something that where I've seen so many times, and I can still get enthused by it. I just,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. Well, we'll cut it short there anyway. We'll do some more videos through the year anyway. I'm sure talking about plenty of other stuff. So yeah, should be good.
thank you for having me on, Joe. As if.
Yeah. No. Thanks.
So I hope you're enjoying this 10th anniversary, 11th annual Brand X Reviews Halloween special. We're going to be back tomorrow night to talk about more. I'm not going to say too much about what we're going to be talking about, but you can check out our playlist with all of our previous Halloween specials going back to 2013, as well as sticking around for the next couple of nights, the next few nights as we lead up to Halloween night itself. Every night at 7:30 p.m. UK time, we're going to be covering. Well, I'm not going to tell you. You're just going to have to check back. But we're going to be covering horror movies and so on. So yeah, subscribe to the channel and remember to check back 7:30 again tomorrow night.